Okay, so KJ, I went to breakfast this morning, and the lady asked me if I wanted a refill of coffee. The word's cafe, right? Cafe, simple. Had no idea what she said. My brain wouldn't even Spanish today. I mean, nothing. There are other days I talk to my friend, and it is completely fluent almost.
Some days are just like that, you know. Some days are just like that, and it doesn't matter how well prepared you are for it. Some days your brain just doesn't Spanish.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just one of the things. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the fatigue that comes with being a newcomer and being a foreigner in a strange land. It's not always that easy.
No, it's not. And there's mental fatigue. Now, there's always beautiful, wonderful things that go along with that, and you'll get through the mental fatigue, but...
So I'm Craig.
And I'm KJ.
And this is Truly a Remarkable Life. And today we are going to talk to you about mental fatigue of being an expat immigrant, foreigner in Mexico.
Yes. So if you don't know, we sold all of our stuff back in the U.S. In 2022, and we moved to Ajijic, Mexico in October of 2022.
Quit our jobs, did everything. Yeah, we started a new life. So if you haven't already, subscribe down below. It's free, and we invite you to join along for the journey. You can check us out on our playlist, Life in Mexico, and start from the very beginning if you haven't yet. So we welcome you.
It's a lot of fun.
No, it is. We've had some trips, man. So it doesn't matter how adventurous you are or how much you have prepared or learned before you come here. There's bound to be some days when you're just tired of everything being new. Everything is difficult. Nothing's familiar sometimes. Sometimes it goes smoothly. Sometimes it doesn't.
And sometimes you just want something familiar. I mean, like, I don't know. Sometimes you just want grandma's meatloaf.
Right.
And, you know how to make it, and you're like, I'm going to make meatloaf.
And then you find out, oh no, she used that onion soup mix. Oh no, where do I buy that? And that is an entire day of trying to figure out where to buy it and realizing you cannot.
Or you'll find the store that you can buy it at, and it's going to cost you $10 a box.
And then it tastes completely different. And it's just, come on, one thing. I want one thing to be easy.
Right.
Anyway, so we're going to tell you a little bit about what we've found to be a little difficult and how we combated those things.
So, I mean, I think that we should start probably with language, because, I mean, that's the most prevalent thing. We live in a little village called Ajijic. It's unceremoniously referred to as Gringolandia sometimes. So there is a lot of English spoken here, and I've said it in videos before. You can get by here speaking nothing but English, but your life is going to be in a very small box.
Yeah.
If you really want to get involved in the community and have a full experience here, you do need to learn Spanish.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't matter how well you think you know Spanish, too. If you've never really been in a authentic environment, the accents are different, the way it's spoken is different. We crossed the border, and my first interaction with someone, I was like, oh, I don't speak Spanish at all.
Well, and and that's a good point, but there's also something else to remember. I mean, like, we're from the U.S., so I'll just use that as an example. In the U.S., I'm from the South. I grew up in Texas and all over the South. Craig is from St. Louis, and whenever we first started dating, literally, there were moments where we were just speaking two completely different languages, even though they're both called English.
Right.
And Mexico is a huge country, so the way that the language and the words and stuff are used up north are different than here in Jalisco, which is different than Tabasco. It's the same thing.
Exactly. And so you might really acclimate to the accent where you're at, and then you change and you go someplace else, or you meet someone from a different area, and you're like, I have no idea what language they're speaking. And it's Spanish, but the accents are so strong. So it's an interesting experience, but it does fatigue your brain. And, you go to the store, and I've told the story before. You go to the store, and when we first got here, I'd practice. Por favor, 12 huevos. Please, 12 eggs. And then they would speak to me like I'm a fluent speaker, and I'm like, no.
It took me all day to come up with that sentence.
No, I just need 12 eggs, please. But it's a funny experience, but after a certain amount of time, it does take a little toll on you And while it's worth it, it's wonderful. And in the last year, our language skills have improved tenfold. I can have full conversations now with, with some challenges, but I can have some full conversations now in Spanish and even by phone or video chat with friends, and it's fine. But I sound like a third grader.
So, and you do. Your brain just gets exhausted with it. I remember like a couple of months ago, I got into this habit of watching movies and TV and stuff like that in Spanish with English subtitles. To kind of get a better ear for the language and that sort of stuff. And we did this for several nights in a row, and Craig finally looked at me and goes, "Can we please listen to something in English? It just makes my brain hurt."
It does. It makes your brain hurt. And then there's differences in words and how words are used. And so you learn in school one way, and then there's a whole other word that's substituted in the culture here.
Yes.
And so you've been calling things the wrong name, and people don't understand you. And even though they're nice and they're helpful, it does create some problems, and it makes your brain tired. That's all it is. And I just reiterate the fact that some days I am like, wait a minute, I'm firing on all cylinders here. I can have a full conversation. And other days I can't remember the word for coffee. Cafe. So
it's tequila. He needs tequila every morning, and then he speaks great Spanish.
I'm fluent on tequila. I may not be saying real words, but I'm fluent.
But that's the point. I mean, it's fatigue. It doesn't mean that like you don't want it.
Yeah.
It just means that sometimes your brain gets a little tired.
Yeah. So how do you combat that for the language? Is number one, try to speak to as many people as you possibly can before you arrive. Try to get, maybe if you get a teacher, get somebody that's a native Mexican, so that you can, or wherever you're traveling to, so that you can actually understand the accent, the pronunciation, and all of those things.
And don't rely on just one thing. Talk to different people, watch TV, listen to radio, do the apps that you can, the free language learning apps.
Yeah.
I mean, do a multitude of different things, because you're going to get a lot of different information.
It's a combination of all of those things. And then be patient with yourself. Really, your focus is to communicate, not to be perfect. They understand that you're from someplace else, and as long as you can get your message across, it's okay. And let yourself off the hook a little bit. And when you have an opportunity to speak English, appreciate it.
So let's move on to the next thing that a lot of people kind of get fatigued with, and I'm going to say food.
Yeah.
So the food here is wonderful. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. You got to remember, a lot of the food here has historical roots going back hundreds, if not thousands of years.
There's some of the best cuisine I've ever had. I mean, your grandmother down the street who runs a little taco stand might be actually making something that is technically considered to be quite a complicated and nuanced dish.
Yes.
And you don't even realize it. It's just street tacos to you. But to a culinary person, it's a pretty complex process. We've actually recently learned, KJ has, to make barbacoa. And I mean, it's an all-day process. This isn't something you buy at Costco.
It takes a while.
This is something it takes a while. So the food is amazing, but you are used to eating in one certain way. And when you come here, the food, the way it's made, the way it's prepared, the seasonings, the spices, the ingredients are all different. And so a lot of people experience some digestive challenges. Fortunately, that wasn't too bad of a thing for us. There is a thing with water here. There's a microbe that might be on the water that we're not used to where we're from. Doesn't matter what you do, you might get something. Once your body becomes accustomed to it, you're fine. But it's a reality, and it gets tiring going, I don't know what kind of tacos are on this board. I can't read this. I don't know the nuances of what they are.
Well, and you get, you're used to having certain food that, you can just go out to a restaurant and you can eat. And I'm going to go back to the U.S. And for instance, I grew up in Texas in the South. There's a lot of Tex-Mex. I also grew up close to New Orleans, a lot of Cajun and Creole food and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved up to St. Louis, and no, No, they have something called Tex-Mex up there. It's not what I'm used to.
No.
You know, I've had Creole New Orleans style food up in St. Louis. No. So, I mean, just think about that. You're going to run into these same issues in the country you're coming from, just regional differences. It's the same thing here.
And then there's digestive issues where we have allergies or people have sensitivities to foods, and then you have to relearn what's in foods here, how it's prepared. Fortunately, a lot of it's really fresh.
Oh, yeah.
And so you don't have the preservatives. I can eat beef here. I couldn't eat it in the States. Those kind of things. So but that gets very tiring. It's like, where are we going to go? What are we going to eat? Do you want tacos again because it's easy? Or do you want to go to some place and then, okay, what is that? I don't know what that is. And once in a while, you just want a Caesar salad and a hamburger, you know?
Right.
So fortunately here, you can get those things. There's different restaurants to go to for different things. But you also want to immerse yourself, and it's sometimes taxing.
Yeah.
The way to kind of do that, I would suggest watching anything you can watch. What's that TV show? We don't work for Netflix, but what is that show?
Oh, Taco Chronicles?
Taco Chronicles. Before you come to Mexico, watch all of Taco Chronicles. It educates you on so many different types of tacos and guisos prepare. You know how it's prepared.
And it's just a lot. It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun, yeah. But do your research, understand the food, understand your digestive issues, and try to read it in advance, and then know yourself. And if you're going to just need a pizza, figure out how to order pizza right away.
Thankfully, in Ajijic, they have Domino's.
Yeah.
There's other pizza restaurants and everything, but I mean, if you're just looking for something that's going to remind you of being in the U.S., there's a Domino's here.
Yeah.
There's Little Caesars, too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's ingredients you can't get here. There's just ingredients you cannot find. So get on those groups on Facebook and all of that stuff. Mitigate in advance, understand in advance, so you know what you're dealing with.
So
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we can move on to like another topic
Yep.
is getting things done. So, you know, in your home country, whenever you got to renew your driver's license or you got to go pay your electric bill, whatever it is, you just know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're in a new country and things are just done differently. And on top of that, when you're dealing with a lot of government offices and stuff, you're going to need to speak Spanish or have someone with you.
Yeah. Setting up we've told this story before, but setting up our internet and Wi-Fi and everything, we had to get somebody to help us that spoke English. They did not have an option to press 2 for English.
Back then they did.
Back then, they might now.
I don't know.
It's also interesting because some things are better. You know, I think you can like pay half of the stuff that you need to pay at the local convenience store. The OXXO chain has ways that you can pay your water bill, your phone bill, your all those different types of things. You just scan it and pay it.
Yeah, I pay our internet online.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of that stuff you can do online. It's not a big deal. But getting things set up or having to deal with government type agencies, things that you need to accomplish, it's going to make your head hurt, especially if you're trying to do it on your own. Now, in a lot of cities that have large expat immigrant foreigner populations, there are people there who help you navigate those systems. They do charge a fee and they will navigate you through it. But there's a lot of locals that are just willing to help you.
Yeah,
for free.
Or even people who kind of just do that on the side. They'll go with you for a small fee and just walk you through Costco for the first time, since it's a little different.
Yeah.
Walk you through how to get your driver's license. You know, there's so many different regulations and that you just have to get used to. I mean, one way around that is to really take advantage of the online groups, ask a lot of questions, and do that. If you are uncomfortable, find a facilitator and have them help you. The cost is, there's a cost, but we're in Mexico, so the cost is a little bit less than what you would expect, and it's really, really helpful. And then you don't have to.
You've learned. You've gone through the process with someone who knows, and then you've learned the process, and you can help yourself later.
And if you can afford to do that the first time, it really takes a lot of stress off of your plate, and you realize how easy it can be, or it's a one-time thing. I don't need to know how to do this again. Makes it a lot easier for you. But if not, there's one rule that we've come up with. One major thing a day. You cannot do more than one major thing a day. If you're planning on learning how to go use a grocery store and do that, Don't plan 3 different stops. You're going to the grocery store today. That's your task.
That's your day. That's your day.
Anyway.
So the other thing, like, you are in a different country. The rules of the road here are different. So driving, while it's very similar, your street signs look different. Traffic behaves different. There are different hand gestures and things that people use.
Where the one-way signs for the streets are, they're not posted. They're painted on buildings. I mean, you almost have to be like I Spy to find them sometimes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's important. You have to learn those things. And people are very gracious and forgiving and all that kind of stuff. Here where we live, I still to this day I will not drive in Guadalajara.
Yeah, he's a little scared of that.
There's a little town to the outskirts of Guadalajara. I'll drive up there and no problems, and I've got that down. But I'm not going into the center of Guadalajara, and I'm not driving in Mexico City.
Not until we get our bearings, at least. I mean, it's it's a different. I won't say different rules of the road.
Have fun.
But I won't say different rules of the road, but I will say different customs about how people drive.
Yeah.
There's hand signals. There's and I don't mean that one. I mean, there's actually polite hand signals or I need to get in and those types of things that are just so different than what we would say we're used to in the northern up north. So
yeah.
But anyway, that's a good one. And again, another way to do that is just ride with a lot of people. Find yourself lots of good resources to read up on. Watch videos like this. Thank you. Please subscribe.
So let's talk about like buying things and going shopping. So you can walk into a store that you're very familiar with. I'm going to use Walmart because Walmart's all over the U.S., all over Canada, and they're all over here in Mexico too.
They are.
But when you walk into Walmart here, it's going to be different than what you're used to back where you came from.
Yeah.
You might think that, I don't know. You might think that a certain item should be shelved in this area of the store because that's the way it's done where you come from. But here it's shelved in a completely different area that makes absolutely no sense to you, but would make sense culturally here.
Yes.
So you have to kind of learn to pay attention to that sort of thing. And I mean, the things you can get in, your bigger chain stores here, some of it is stuff you're not going to be used to seeing, but it's wonderful that you can get it there. So that's a big plus.
For an example, like, we were looking for a blender and we couldn't find the blenders in the houseware section. They had a couple, but they didn't have them, like all of them. And we thought, we don't need them. We'll go find it someplace else. And then we got over by the salsa section and they had an end cap with all the blenders on it. We're making your own salsa.
Right.
And we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right, it does. It does.
But where do you find it? Where do you get a certain item? I have gone all over town trying to find a shelf board. I couldn't find one. I gave up because that's just not a thing here. You hire an independent person to do it. It's done differently. So
yeah.
I would encourage everybody, to kind of combat that. Again, take one thing at a time. Make it have your translator app ready at Walmart to scan things and to see what the words really are and learn as you go, and it will help you in the future. So take some of that stress off.
It really, really does. And I think it's probably time we close this out, and I'm gonna close with this. FDR once said, "There is nothing to fear but fear itself."
Yes.
And I think that really holds true. You move to another country, there's going to be some fear, whether you want to admit it or not. There is, and it's usually fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is get out there. If it's the unknown that's making you scared, get out there and know it.
Yeah. Don't live in a bubble when you come to a new place. Try to experience that location fully. Get into one end to the other of it. Take the buses. Go to the local markets. Try to speak the language, because it's going to open your world up a lot more, make it a lot easier, and reduce some of that fatigue. I know people here who live their entire existence in a little subdivision. They go to one store and one restaurant, and both of those things are very specific to the expats, the foreigners, and so it limits what they're going to learn, and it makes it actually more isolating and more makes you feel more lonely. And so the more you can integrate yourself, the better. But that's the big thing, is that at some point you're going to have, and I'm going to close this out, but you're going to have a moment where you're just in tears, you're tired, your brain hurts, you want something familiar, and you're like, I want to go home. Let yourself feel it, get through it, wake up tomorrow and try again, because I guarantee you it will get easier.
Go buy that $10 box of soup mix, make your grandma's
Yep.
meatloaf, sit at home, watch an English-speaking movie that you're familiar with, and eat your meatloaf and
FaceTime with your mom, something, whatever.
and go to bed, and you'll wake up the next day re-energized and probably speaking better Spanish than you did the day before when you were tired.
Yeah, a lot of times that fatigue is your brain is working. But well, we just wanted to share a little bit and let you know that expat, immigrant, foreigner fatigue is a very real thing. To take some deep breaths and understand before you come here that will be a thing.
It will be a thing, and you'll get through it. We did. We still do.
We still do every day. Like today, when I forgot the word for coffee. Cafe.
Cafe.
Okay. And if you haven't already, thank you for being here.
And go find your truly remarkable life.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.